Hi, my name is Dr. Jamie Klingman. I am the founder of the Exit Strategy Company, and I am excited to get the smoke out of the way and help you understand what your business is really worth, as I wish I had when I sold my company years ago.
Hi, my name is Sam Martinez. I'm a business broker with the Exit Strategy Company. And I got into this business because I sold my business as well about 5 years ago. And now I get the privilege to help others exit from their businesses as well. Jamie Klingman.
Mr. Martinez, I always call you that, but you're Sam.
Yeah, Sam, I am. Green
Yep.
eggs and ham. So we've been talking about understanding valuation of your business. Last time we talked about EBITDA and adjusted EBITDA and sales discretionary earnings. And now comes the fun part. Why does that matter? So
And
why does that matter?
multiplication. The multiplication, I feel like it reminds me of third grade. Every time I hear the word multiple, I think of the multiplication tables we had to practice.
I don't think they use that anymore, by the way, which is really sad.
I'm really old, so it's fair.
I know, me too. But multiplication is a happy word because if you take a number and you multiply it, that's what you get when you sell your business. So it's super, super important. The way evaluation works is actually a multiple of your seller's discretionary earnings. And so um, I know, Jamie, you got a ton of experience in the healthcare space and in so many others and online and, tech companies and that kind of thing. And I've worked on government contractors and also doctors' offices and other things. What is a typical multiple for a company? Let's just say, hey, you're making $250,000 a year in your SDE. What's a typical multiple?
So typical is tough because it really does change by industry. So what multiples do is let us compare apples to apples as much as possible. So you take similar sized company and you look at other similar sized companies and you look at their industry and what their SDE is and what they sold for, and you get to this multiple. I would say on average, at that size, 250, it's probably about three.
Yeah. And that, by the way, is what we are seeing in the industry is that for companies that have enterprise values under 1 million, it is a little bit standardized, not totally standardized. I just want to give an example. So the way a business is valued, just to recap really quickly, is your seller's discretionary earnings or your adjusted EBITDA. And what the buyer is buying is that cash flow. That's why that has to be verifiable. It cannot be based on a hope or a whim. That opportunity will be for the buyer to enjoy if or once they actually make that money. So we're looking at what is historical, what is verifiable. And so the multiple, the way that's determined is by industry and is also by the quality of that revenue. So to give an example, but I'll just use government contracting because I'm pretty familiar with that space. In government contracting, if you're an 8A company, and you have those types of SBA 8A contracts, and they don't have a lot of backlog. In other words, say you're already halfway through these contracts, you might get a 2 to 3 multiple, as opposed to a non 8A, just a standard contract, especially if you're a prime. And there's a big backlog. In other words, that there's these contracts are new. They got a 5 year runway or more. I mean, with options and such, then you could be upwards to a 5 multiple, maybe even higher. So that makes a huge difference. That's the difference between $1 million company or a $2 million company. I mean, really. And so, yeah, multiples are a big deal. What would you say also, Jamie? How can we increase our multiples?
Multiples are affected by so much. Another in the under 4 to 5 million space is the owner involvement. If the owner's reputation is a huge part of that goodwill, the multiple is going to be lower because it's going to be harder to sell and assure a buyer that that's going to continue when the owner's not there. Length of time you've been in business. So, if you've been in business 1 or 2 years, it's that multiple is going to be lower because you just haven't proven the space the same way a company that's been in business. If you've been in business 3 to 5 years and you've grown every year, that's a prime place to be because you're demonstrating that you understand the space, that your business is reactive to changes, particularly in the past 3 to 5 years, and are able to, the buyer can be assured that that's going to be a functional business going forward. Those are some of the controllable factors, right? Making sure that when you're building your business, that you are building a business that you can step away from. You should be able to go on vacation and not have the world come to a grinding halt. If you can't do that, that means selling is going to be harder.
Yeah.
So it's a good litmus test. If you can go away and things are okay, um, that's that's really important to that overall, is a buyer going to be able to step in? And again, that's true in the highly relational, highly referral based type industries.
Yeah. And then a couple of really quick things is if it's a recurring or is it one-time sales? Also, customer concentration. That is huge. If half your money comes from one client, that's going to beat up your multiple pretty hard. If you can keep that under 15%, that's going to be a win for you. So, oh my gosh, we can talk about this for another 3 hours because there's so many nuances. But I think the biggest takeaway is that you start working with a exit planning kind of team, including somebody like us or somebody with that kind of skill set that can put these things together to make sure long before you get to the point where it's like, I want to sell, that you actually work on these things so you can maximize your value and not just maximize your value, that your company can be underwritten by a commercial or SBA loan and you can make a smooth transition. So, shameless plug.
Nothing wrong with that. See you next time.